Hello, my name is Dave Glover. My partner Shawn P and I are students at the Community College of Baltimore County, currently enrolled in the Geospatial Applications program. For a class project, we were looking at food deserts within Baltimore City, and more specifically, ways to use urban farming within those areas. Today, I'm going to briefly show how we used ArcGIS in the site selection and sunlight and shadow analysis for urban farming locations within those food deserts. So here was our plan. We needed to find a focus area. Within that needed to be within a food desert and also on vacant land. We also needed to create shadow maps in running shadow analysis of all the vacant lots that were at least a third acre or more, but not identified as an EPA brownfield or a city park. So going through our data, we really needed to narrow down our search field. Baltimore City has a portal called Open Baltimore, in which it's a great resource that you can go to and find all kinds of GIS data. We were able to pull up vacant lot and building data from this portal. We found that there are over 18,000 vacant lots within Baltimore City and also almost 106,000 buildings. Now that's a lot of data to work with, but we're not working with all of that at once. So let's go back to our food desert and try to see what we're only concerned with. So within our food desert, there are 6,972 vacant lots. Now we're only trying to look at vacant lots that are a third acre or more, and that brings us down to 187. We'll take out the 4 brownfields that are found within the Baltimore City food deserts, and that brings us to 183, and then subtract the 45 city parks, which drops us to a final number of 138 areas to work with. Now 138 areas is also a significant number to work with considering what we're trying to do. So let's bring this down a little bit further, more to a neighborhood level. So Shawn and I looked at all the neighborhoods within Baltimore City and selected the neighborhood with the highest amount of vacant lots. And that turned out to be the Poppleton neighborhood, which had 10 vacant lots. Now, to select only the buildings that we need to work with, we ran a buffer around each one of the vacant lots, and that buffer was for 60 feet, which selected a total of 49 buildings. Now this map Shawn created shows the vacant lots that we're working with, and those are shaded dark to black there. Those again are the areas that we're working with. All the areas that are brown, that are the dark brown, those are the buildings within the Poppleton neighborhood. And you can also see the other vacant lots and parcels as well. So moving into the extensions and tools that we used Spatial Analyst, 3D Analyst, Model Builder, and Python. And Python was used in the ArcDesktop environment and also with PyWin outside of Arc. Spatial Analyst was used primarily to process the raster imagery that was created during the shadow map analysis. Now we use 3D Analyst because we are working within a 3D environment. And by creating visual models of our processing workflows, we were able to automate those processes, and that saved time and also reduced human error, and that was done using Model Builder. Now we move into more of our project workflow. We needed to create 3D building models. We also needed to create a point for the sun at a given date and time, generate shadows, obviously. We also had to create base layer raster imagery to record those shadows onto. Intersect shadows with our vacant lots. We also had to create shadow footprint images of those intersected areas, and that goes back to the base layers. And then finally we had to compile all of those images into one composite image. So let's now jump into actually putting the sun in the sky. And this is the part where we created our sun sky map. Now we needed to figure out how to put the sun in the sky, and more so how to do it accurately. And that's where Python came in. we had to go out and get an external module for Python called PyEthom. And what that did is it provided scientific grade astronomical computations for Python. Kind of in a nutshell, it's what allowed us to put in a date and time, and it put the sun in the sky relative to a position on Earth that we designated. So for our date and time, we used May 1st, 2012, and our time period ran from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. at 1-hour intervals. And once we ran through PyEthom and it did its magic, this is what the output looked like. And this is a view of the sky looking towards the west, with the Poppleton neighborhood in the lower right-hand portion of the image, and as the sun kind of tracks its way downward towards the horizon. So now we roll into actually creating the shadows. But before we get too far into that, I wanted to show you what our models look like. Now this is Model Builder, and this shows you the general workflow of the tools that we use to actually generate the shadows. Everything you see in the yellow rectangles, those are the tools that ArcGIS uses to run processes. Everything in the dark blue ovals, those are our inputs, and then everything in the green ovals are the outputs. So getting into creating shadows, and this was done using 3D Analyst. The first tool that we used was our skyline tool. And for that, we used our sun locations, or the observation points, and relative to our buildings. And what that created was a shadow silhouette in relation to the building. Next thing we had to do was run our skyline barrier tool, and this is what actually gave us the shadow volumes. And again, we used our sun locations and our 3D buildings with our newly created shadow silhouettes, and that actually projected it down at the given angle dependent upon where the sun was located at the sky at the time, down to our surface. Now we get into creating our base layers. We needed to create a series of 3 images to work with in the analysis of shadow versus no shadow. You've heard me use the term raster, and to help you understand what a raster image is, think of a digital picture. That digital picture is made up of pixels. Each pixel is a cell, and those cells are arranged in rows and columns. Now each one of those cells may or may not have a numerical value. Depending on the value that is assigned in each cell, the software application can determine what color to give it. When thousands and millions of these cells are aligned in a grid, a picture emerges. Now, going back to our 3 rasters we need to create. First is the temporary zero raster. Now all this is the software taking a digital picture, if you will, of our vacant lots. If a vacant lot lays on top of a cell within the grid, inside the picture, it is assigned a value of 0. If it doesn't, then the cell is assigned a value of 1. Next is the is-null or no value raster. With this, instead of assigning a numerical value to some cells within the image, the software just leaves them blank. And finally, the zero raster. In this visually stunning masterpiece, all of the cell values are the same, making the entire image the same color. When we created all of our building shadows, Shawn and I ran into a few problems. It was not anything that we did as an ArcGIS user, but more so with 3D Analyst. In ArcGIS 10.0, using 3D Analyst to intersect our shadows with our vacant lots caused it to crash a couple of times, and it turns out that it had trouble computing specific shadows, highlighted here in the image in red. Once we were able to isolate the problematic shadows, everything else ran smoothly. Now Esri has posted that this issue has been resolved for the ArcGIS Desktop 10.1 release. And now it's time to put it all together. Excluding the images created for 11 a.m., noon, and 1 p.m., those being the time periods that were problematic, we take our remaining 8 rasters and add them all together into a single composite image. The image to the right shows how this is done by adding up all of the cell values in the same location for each raster image. The sum or total numerical value is assigned to the corresponding composite image cell. Thus, by doing so with our own images, we create a summarized or composite shadow map. In the image to the right, we can see that our vacant lot fades from a light brown color to a darker color. The areas of the vacant lots that are darker in color receive more shadow throughout the day than the lighter areas. The same can be seen in this ortho or top-down view in the image below. The dark blue areas indicate longer shadow periods than the lighter blue. The orange polygons are the buildings that were used to model the shadows. From this data, we are now able to take a more scientific approach to identifying what types of crops would do well based on sunlight and shadow times. Shawn and I know there are a number of other steps as well to crop identification and selection, including but not limited to soil and water analysis, site optimization, and especially physical inspection or ground truthing of these site areas. Our data sources can be found at the end of the presentation. As you can see right here, ArcGIS resources can be found at http://resources.arcgis.com/en/home. And that's where you can go and search for the 3D virtual city and shadows analysis, where it details how to actually conduct the analysis of the shadow maps themselves. We thank you for your time and interest in our project, and these are our data sources. Thank you.